Hey everybody, this is herculespetix, founder, curator, docent, and gift shop employee of the herculespetix Academy of Comic Book Studies. Today we're going to be looking at Brian Blomerth's Bicycle Day. This is a 2019 graphic novel about Albert Hofmann and the discovery of LSD. Apparently Brian Blomerth has a couple of other graphic novels after this that are all about certain drugs or certain psychedelics. And this is the first one, and it's about LSD. His artwork is perfect for this because it's completely drenched in lysergic acid, his style. And never saw this guy before until a few days ago. I was at Floating World, one of the greatest comic book stores in the world, here in Portland, Oregon. And they have a wonderful setup where they just have all these new releases just sitting on tables. So you just can't help but just pick up something. That cover looks interesting. And then I flipped through this and I was just like, who the fuck is this guy? This art is amazing. And it's really fun art. And pretty fat little graphic novel here. Pretty nice. And let's get into it. Really well-designed book. It's really nice. Like before the graphic novel even starts, we get all these nice little graphics from Brian Blomerth. Kind of reminds me of like Peter Max or like Yellow Submarine. Oh. Title page, another nice graphic. Really vibrant colors in this graphic novel. I guess in interviews he claims that he wants this book to almost be like a children's book about LSD. So it has one of these little "this book belongs to" things, like in a kid's book. Some dedications. Another cool image, which I don't even think has anything to do with the book. What's in the book? Just some cool graphic. And we have an introduction by Dennis McKenna. He's the brother of Terence McKenna, the famous kind of LSD advocate. And Dennis McKenna is as well. This is very pro-LSD, this article, claiming it's just this drug given to us from the gods. It's a very straight editorial, introduction. It's just giving us the facts about how Albert Hofmann invented LSD and his first trip on it. We have a little map of Switzerland because that's where the story takes place, and we start off in 1938 and the world is sleeping. So I'm going to try not to break the spine on this book, but there's a lot of double page spreads in this. And here we see Albert Hofmann riding his bike to work, which I guess he did every day, and things are already looking pretty trippy even before he's ever taken LSD. That's just the way Brian Blomerth draws. It's also kind of funny that his view of Switzerland, which he's never been to, I'm pretty sure, it's just like almost like all cliches of Switzerland. It's almost like a Rico-like commercial. We got the Swiss Miss from the hot chocolate, it looks like, over here. All these cute little critters abound in this book. These funny animal characters just in the background. Just really fun, cute stuff. I mean, you could totally see why this is like a kid's book. The art style. We see these farmers collecting or harvesting wheat. And they make it seem like a total, like a musical or a children's movie where harvesting wheat is just this fun, happy, everyone's having a great time. I love this accordion with this rainbow of colors. And then we see the wheat being shipped. Mountain climbers. It's just totally like this idyllic view of Switzerland. And we see this guy deliver some wheat to the Sandoz pharmaceutical factory. That's where Albert Hofmann worked. And we see young Albert Hofmann in his laboratory. Just look at all this groovy shit. And one of his colleagues here is named Arthur Stoll. Look at this art style. Like, when I first saw this, I was instantly reminded of, like, the Dutch underground cartoonists from the 70s, mid to late 70s, like Evert Gerrits. Really looks like a lot of Evert Gerrits in his art. Everyone's really rubbery and, you know, almost like a great animated cartoon from the 30s, but with much better colors. So, I'm sorry, this guy Arthur is kind of lecturing Albert about why they're there. You can really tell Blomerth just loves drawing all this, just random beakers and bottles, and it's just packed with them. So Albert Hofmann and Arthur, they've been researching ergot. Now, ergot is this substance in wheat. I think it's when wheat goes bad, basically. And it has psychedelic properties. And some people say that even the witch trials, the witch hysteria in the Middle Ages in Europe was caused by just certain towns. You know, their wheat went bad in the silos, and they were all ingesting ergot. And they were basically tripping balls. And that's why they did such crazy stuff. But, so they were doing research trying to synthesize what was in ergot. I think it's pronounced ergot. There's weird little stuff throughout. Like, these guys are just having a discussion, and their skeletons are like behind their body, maybe coming out of their body. It really has no bearing on the plot. Very odd, but it makes it very visually interesting. There's always going to be some weird thing on these pages where you're like, that's weird. This is just so manic. Like, here his shoes are like anthropomorphized. They're like little cartoon character shoes. I remember this is all before he took LSD. So it's not supposed to be hallucinations. This is just the fun, goofy way that Brian Blomerth sees the world, I think. There's a lot of pages of actually showing us how he synthesized this ergot into LSD, what we know as LSD. If the graphics weren't so groovy and cool, it would have been kind of boring, actually. I was just like, I don't care about chemistry. But look at these pages, just how well designed they are. So many pages in this book could just be great little posters, you know? They're really nice. Especially the colors. His color choices are zany, like day glow, crazy stuff. We're going to see more of the day glow later, after the acid kicks in. So just page after page of this. Actually, Brian Blomerth did his research. Apparently, he admits that he's not really a chemistry guy, but he did the research and wanted to get it kind of accurate. Just the choice of having all the animals be, the characters be funny animal type characters. It's just so funny to me. So he's finally ready to test LSD 25 on rats. And the lab rats seem to have no change. So it seems like a washout. He observes the rats. They're not doing anything different. They're just, whatever, doing what rats do. And he says, no response. And he sighs and says, oh, well, back to the drawing board. But I love this. It's like, yeah, someone on LSD, you might not necessarily know they're on LSD unless they're freaking out. But he shows, even though the rats are just sitting here doing nothing, this is what they're feeling like. we just couldn't talk to the rats to ask them what they were feeling. But they were feeling the LSD. At least that's how Brian Blomerth imagines it. And I love this. Their word balloons are just a kaleidoscope of just nonsense and weirdness. So he rides his bicycle home after a hard day of work. A little disappointed that his LSD 25 didn't seem to do anything. Once again, just look at all this. There's all these goofy animals hanging out. Man. And he's starting to feel something. And look at this, how it's almost like the bottom of the ocean, the landscape. And he stops on the way home to skip some stones. I love this 2-page spread. Just the way he does the water with all these dappled shades of blue. Of course, more cute critters. Turtle with a hat. And definitely things are getting a little more psychedelic in his head. He's feeling something weird. And when he gets home, he is greeted by his wife, Anita. And he has 3 children. And look at the sky. Things are getting trippy. This is kind of interesting, almost like Ralph Steadman stuff going on. And Albert gets a letter in the mail. He's getting drafted into the army. And Anita's pregnant. I love this, how she looks like she drops her son. Throws him on the ground. She's so shocked. Excuse me. And then that night he goes to sleep very, very worried. Even this quilt, look at this. It almost looks like a comic page, like panels on a page. Just beautiful stuff everywhere you look in this book. So now we jump ahead to 1943. That's the last, Albert Hoffman ever thought about LSD 25 for a while. And I assume he went off to the army. And he's back home, though, it looks like. And back to his normal routine. This is kind of weird. They have a whole recipe for this. I assume it's a Swiss breakfast food called Collermousse. And we see them eating breakfast, but this whole 2 pages of just giving us the exact recipe. So it looks like Brian Blomerth's really into just, processes, and it seems like he gets into explaining things. Interesting background here. Very different from anything else we've seen. And Albert heads off to work again. And on the way to work, he sees this guy, Paul Mueller. He's another colleague. And he's experimenting on DDT. This is the guy who invented DDT, which I guess when DDT came out, it was like this miracle pesticide. They were like, it kills bugs, but it has no harmful effects on higher life forms. Here, and he sprays Albert Hoffman and his son with DDT. Of course, we all quickly learned that DDT does have very harmful effects on higher animals, including humans. But at the time, Mueller was optimistic and just thinking it was completely safe. I love this 2-page spread of Mueller's worrying about the Nazis invading Switzerland. Kind of really cool art. I couldn't find out. I know it's sounds dumb of me, but I just couldn't find out like a nice little biography of Brian Blomerth. Like, I don't even know where he's from. But by his art style, I would totally think he's European. But I don't know. If anyone knows, Put it in the comments below, would you? I did look up his name, but all I could find was like his website and reviews of his comics that didn't mention his nationality. They spray this bird flying by, and the bird drops dead. And Mueller's like, uh-oh, maybe this isn't so great, this DDT. So Albert continues on his way to work, giving his son a ride to school. And as he rides away, Mueller and his colleague are kind of making fun of Albert Hoffman. It's such a weird joke. He says, I heard that Albert's working on a chemical vaginal constrictor. Nobody ever won a Nobel Prize for tightest pussy. He laughs. Such an odd joke. So he drops his kid off at school. And kind of shaking his head at that Mueller guy. What a jerk he is. Gets to his job. For some reason, there's a bat out during the day. I guess it doesn't really matter. It looks like there's a Pink Panther up there. And now we meet Susie, his fellow scientist. And apparently she was the first woman to take LSD. But that hasn't happened yet. Once again, he just loves drawing objects. Look at this crazy, cartoony pile of crap. So basically, after 5 years, Albert is like, I really want to review that LSD 25 thing. What the hell went on, happened there? And I like this view of his brain thinking. Here's a memory of his childhood. Apparently he had this like mystic event when he was a kid. Some people theorize that, it's kind of weird because he already had experiences like LSD, just, without it. He'd have these mystic events in his life where he'd see things. So it's interesting that he was the first person to experiment with LSD. Oh man, I love these 2 pages. I think what's going on here, this is like him thinking in abstract form. It almost looks like a complicated musical score. Both of these pages I really like. And it's on notebook paper, so it looks like, oh yeah, he's working stuff out. And he tells Susie to fire up the Bunsen burners, and he's going to try again. He's just going to do a different process to synthesize it and see what happens. Look at this. Nerdy business. He really researched the shit out of this. So I don't know if I think he has a little, because he's feeling nauseous already. I'm sorry. So this is the first event he has where some of the LSD kind of like just splashed on his skin, and it gave him a little feeling of LSD. First he feels nauseous. He tells Susie to tell the boss that he has to leave. And so now he rides his bike home, and this is basically his first real trip. He's feeling the effects pretty hard. So much great visual stuff to look at, just this bunch of rocks. It's interesting, these trees though, it's almost like, looks like some manga, just quick brush strokes. And of course these goofy animals everywhere you look. He looks across the German border and he sees like a town on fire, a fighter plane or a bomber, just dropped the bombs on it. I don't know if this is in his head or not though. And he makes it home, and his wife says, "You look terrible." He just thinks it's maybe chloroform fumes that made him sick. And we see he's starting, it's like these purples and greens kind of represent his hallucinations, his feeling of being on LSD. And he's just kind of grooving on them. That must have been so strange, being the first person who took LSD who doesn't even know what it's supposed to do. And I guess you would just think you were going insane. Things are getting trippier and heavier. More blotches of color, not just little lines. And then, this is the kind of stuff why I was flipping through the book and I was like, I gotta buy this. This is so cool looking to me. All these groovy psychedelic scenes, and it's just colors here. The day glowness of them. So nice. Oh man, look at that. I love this kind of stuff. I haven't done hallucinogens in like I think 30 years at this point in my life. But I still love like crazy LSD inspired art. Of course, there's all these mushrooms growing outside his window in his hallucinations. And actually, maybe they're really there. Things are getting trippier. And then his daughter comes up to him and says, "Milk for Papa?" And it's almost like he's in such his own world. He says, "Gabby, how did you find your way in here?" He doesn't realize he's still sitting in the same room in his house. Like this koala playing a didgeridoo. I don't know why that cracks me up so much. It's just so fucking cute the way he draws these little goofy animals. He drinks the milk, and I never knew this. All of a sudden, his hallucination stops dead, and he's back in reality. He says, "And it's gone." And I never knew that drinking milk kind of negated the effects of LSD. None of my friends who did LSD with me ever told me this. But maybe it's just this kind of LSD. Maybe the LSD I was doing is so different that it doesn't matter. I was doing it in the 80s. And Albert Hoffman is a very heavy sleep after that brain workout. So now we see it's a few days later. His wife and kids are going to see her parents to stay with them, and Albert's going to be left alone. Oh, I guess I should. There's a 2-page spread. Takes him to the train station and heads off on his bicycle once again. He runs to the lab, and he's just like, "Susie, we got to get to the bottom of this." He tells her what happened. So he's basically being a little detective. He's looking around saying, "Who's the culprit? What did I touch yesterday? Or what did I get near that could have made that effect?" He doesn't even realize it's the LSD 25. He has no idea why he felt so crazy the day before. And I think he figures it out, and he takes a big dose. Apparently he took like 25 milligrams, I believe, which is a huge dose of LSD. He thought it would be, he's like, "Yeah, that sounds good." Like I said, he didn't know. He was a pioneer, a brain pioneer. Oh, this is just background design work stuff. So he tells Susie, he says, "I ingested some of that LSD 25. Will you ride your bike home with me? I'm a little worried. I'm already feeling a little weird." And so now, this is Albert's first like major trip. And the animals are going crazy. All the animals. It's weird, I think all these animals we've seen before, actually. The same animals. I like this, how there's almost a second of his brain just emptying, ready for the onslaught. And then we see this, the earth is unzipping. Into this almost other dimension, you know? So now we got the greens and the pinks. That seems to be the colors of psychedelia. Oh, look at this. So much fun. Kind of like some Mary Fleener business going on here. Oh, these colors. So things it's not a very good trip. He starts wigging out. He feels like his head becomes a balloon and separates from his body. And he can look down on his body and Susie. He wonders if he's dead. He's just totally lost in the trip. If you've ever been like that, where you're just like, what the hell's going on? And now he's doing other new stuff, this black and white. Maybe implying that there's like a darkness to this trip. It's not such a great trip after all. He starts wondering about if he's dead and what about his family. You know, all the things you shouldn't think about when you're tripping. You shouldn't think about negative stuff. There's still all this fun, zany Dr. Seuss looking stuff, you know, going on. But the background's like this cool looking black and white design. And then he crashes his bike. Oh man, this was fun. I just love these colors. That Swiss Miss chocolate lady, hot chocolate lady from before is now kind of doing a little striptease for him in his head. I mean, he's seen everything. This totally looks like from old silly symphonies, from Disney cartoons. He sees Mueller kind of mocking him, the ghost of Mueller. Well, he's not dead, but you know. And he's like, tisk tisk, a young chemist killed by his own creation. What a sad thing. So his trip is very dark. It's turning very dark. So as he trips harder, the colors are going off register. The art's becoming even more unhinged. Just as his brain is. Every page turns like a totally different kind of style. And I mean, I guess it's all in the same style, but it's a revelation to me. So he gets home and he says, Susie, please go to the neighbor and get some milk. So luckily he knows what to do. And look how bad things are getting. This fucking evil looking creature is preying on him. Even the broom is frowning. It's not a very good trip. It's a little too strong for him. But luckily Susie gets the milk. And she calls the hospital, and she says, send a doctor. And then she calls his wife in Lucerne, who was visiting the folks, you know. And she says, I think your husband's dying. This one is just so, like, I don't know. It just reminds me of feelings I felt at LSD. I know that sounds so hippy-dippy. But just the way it's almost like jagged colors. Sometimes when I was coming down, things would get a little too crisp and sharp in the world. But then it totally changes here. Just looks like Jackson Pollock coloring here. No registration at all. We see the doctor leaving the hospital, running to make a house call. We also see Anita taking the first train back home. And of course, she's terribly worried about Albert. So, of course, the doctor comes and says, there's nothing wrong with you, except you have dilated pupils. You're fine. Because that's, LSD does. It doesn't really hurt you physically. And Anita makes it home. She's very relieved. And that night, Albert sleeps the sleep of the just. His brain is worn out. Now we see the next day. And look at this totally different style. Because when Albert Hoffman woke up the next day, that's when he got the beneficial effects of LSD. He says a sensation of well-being, renewed life flowed through me. And it's almost like he's getting the feelings of like ecstasy or something, just pure bliss. He loves his kids. He tells his kids he loves them. He loves the breakfast he's eating. Everything tastes wonderful. I really like this, using these different colors that are, just completely just like slapped over the art, as almost like this is the residual effects of the day after, of tripping balls, where it's pretty real, but there's still little wisps of, hallucination flowing in the air. Everything glistens in the soft, fresh light. The world was as if newly created. And that's the end there. I never had that myself. I would trip hard, and it's not like the next day I'd be like, oh, what a great feeling. But then again, I don't think I've ever done 25 milligrams of LSD. The most I ever did was 4 hits, and I doubt it was very strong, because in Tucson in the 80s, we didn't have great acid. In fact, a lot of it was strychnine. He has a little warning in case somebody wants to duplicate this experiment, using this as a guidebook, which of course he says, please do not. This is not a chemistry book. And this is he calls the afterword, he calls it confessions. And this is pretty interesting. He talks about failing high school chemistry, but he loves drawing these test tubes. Here's one. He actually draws it again. He says, I felt like doing another one. I guess there's this organization he urges us to contribute to, which is all about psychedelic research, using hallucinogens for research purposes. And just talks about some of, just little bits of ephemera. He does mention in 1971, Timothy Leary came to visit Albert Hoffman, who's, an old man. Leary asked to see the bicycle, to which Albert replied, I threw that hunk of chunk away. It's interesting, he gives a shout out to Richard Scarry, because all those animals frolicking, I seriously instantly thought of Richard Scarry the first few pages. I myself have never been to Switzerland, but feel what I depicted in these pages is accurate. I don't know about that. I don't know if bears wear those cute little Swiss hats and the suspenders and the lederhosen. We get another nice little cute drawing here. And we got a page of thank yous. I love this. He ends it with lick this spot. I was almost tempted to do it. That would be amazing if the publisher actually put a little LSD in all these books. And a beautiful back cover, crazy design. Once again, a cuckoo clock. So there you go, guys. Brian Blomerth's Bicycle Day. This is quite a visual treat. I gotta say, there's not much narrative in this. It's not much story. It's really, to me, it's just all about the art and just how amazing it is. So, but yeah, sometimes, I'm more of a story guy usually, but every now and then there's some cartoonist who's just so visually inventive. I just don't care. I don't care what the story's about. It's a nice icing on the cake if it's a good story too. But yeah, this is just some beautiful, fun stuff. And yeah, I guess he has two other ones in this drug series. And the latest one, which I can't remember the name, just came out. And I'm going to be going back to Floating World and getting more of his stuff. I just got this one because I didn't even know if I'd like it. But I fucking love it. And I definitely want more. So I hope you guys enjoyed looking at this crazy psychedelia with me. And I hope to see you next time here at the Herculespetix Academy of Comic Book Studies.